Almost any experienced trailer editor will tell you that music is the single most powerful way to affect the tone, style, and energy of a trailer. And for that reason, most editors will begin by choosing their music first. Depending on the trailer, you'll likely need anywhere between 1 and 3 music cues. You might use one for your opening and exposition in Act 1, a second in Act 2 for the story development or conflict, and a third, typically the biggest or most impactful, for Act 3, where you'll be doing a lot of montaging and letting the music really have some room to breathe and carry the piece. Sometimes you'll be able to find a single music cue that has a wide range of tempos and sonic variety that'll work well in all acts of your trailer. But more often than not, you'll need at least a couple different ones. So instead of just listening to a bunch of different opening cues or back-end cues and trying to imagine whether or not it'll work well with your footage and create the tone and emotion that you're going for, there's a powerful technique to make this process easier. Go into your visual breakdown and choose a handful of shots, say 10 or so. You'll want to pick parts of the shots that have something interesting going on, and then basically just throw together a quick and dirty picture montage on your timeline. Make sure all the shots are roughly the same length, and determine that length by the overall tempo that you're going for. So, if you're looking for a fast music cue, make them all about a second. If you're auditioning slower, more dramatic cues, the shots would be about 2 seconds in length. This way, you can start laying in different pieces of music against the shots to see how well the picture and the music feel together. Trust your gut here, and decide if you like the way the materials are synergizing. Have a look at a cue that we auditioned using some footage from the film The Martian. That cue feels pretty good. Obviously, the picture won't line up perfectly with the beats, and there won't be any real polish or finesse happening, but you should be able to get a pretty good idea if a particular piece of music has the potential to work well in your trailer cut. Have a listen to another cue cut against our picture. Nice. 2 good options so far. As you find potential winners, save a copy of the sequence and label it with the name of the cue. Once you've got, say, 5 to 10 of these, go back through them for a second listen and pick the cue that you think will work best in your particular trailer. This type of music auditioning process is an extremely powerful way to quickly see the potential of the trailer and to give yourself the best chance of creating the perfect marriage of audio and visuals. Now, a couple more music auditioning tips you'll want to remember. Once you've got a cue you'd like to use, open the piece of music in your editing program and go through the entire cue. Add markers or locators on all of the important musical beats. You'll probably want to turn on your waveforms as you do this to make the process a little bit faster and more accurate. This is another deceptively simple trick, but it's disproportionately powerful with the effect that it'll have on your ability to cut an amazing trailer. The goal here is to give you a quick and accurate way to visually tell where the beats of your music will fall, so that when you start cutting, you'll have a much easier time making certain that your dialogue lines fall in between the major beats of the cue, and important visual accents land exactly on them. The last thing I'll mention about choosing and prepping your music cue is to really explore all the different sections of the cue. When cutting your trailer, you're going to need to stop the music in certain places, begin it again, and have it skip entire sections that might start to get repetitive in your piece. In short, you'll be cutting up the music on the beats and rearranging parts of it like puzzle pieces to fit your trailer perfectly. Knowing that you'll be doing at least some of this customization, it's important to be aware of all the interesting nuances your cue has to offer. That includes pickups, ringouts, big sections, small sections, and everything in between. So in this lesson, we talked all about the process of choosing your music and preparing it for editing. We learned how to properly audition your music cues against picture to determine which ones are likely to work the best with your footage based on the positioning you've chosen for your trailer. We also discussed how to mark the beats of your cue to have a visual guide for cutting your picture and audio to fit the rhythm of your music. And we also talked about the importance of fully exploring your cue in order to understand its different sections and components, which you'll be cutting up and customizing a bit to fit your trailer perfectly. Coming up, we'll be learning all about sound design, the huge role it plays in the trailer editing process, and how to use it in an effective and masterful way. All right, I'll see you in a bit. Most of you are probably already familiar with the basics of sound design and how to use it while editing. Trailers, however, require a level of knowledge far beyond the basics. Trailer editing is by far the most sound design intensive style of editing you could ever attempt, and as such, it's important that we spend a bit of time discussing the finer points on the subject. Sound design is artificially created or enhanced sound used to manipulate the mood of a scene or simulate the audio of non-existent things, such as lasers, alien roars, etc. Sound design is just one of several categories that exist under the umbrella of sound effects. Commonly used types of sound design include whooshes, swishes, hits, rises, power downs, suckbacks, stingers, drones, swells, pulses, and a huge variety of miscellaneous and interesting sounds. The effect of sound design in a trailer should not be underestimated. It's an area of trailer editing well worth the time required to perfect. Now, we're going to discuss the two most important fundamentals of sound design: how to organize your sound design, and two, how to use your sound design. Let's quickly touch on sound design organization, and then move on to the sound design techniques themselves. Most trailer editors like to organize their sound design, and sound effects for that matter, in a hierarchical way. This is because we typically have a huge number of effects to choose from, upwards of tens of thousands. Editors will have their master sound design and effects bins labeled according to the type of sound design or effect that's contained in each. So you'll have a bin for hits, a bin for whooshes, a bin for rises, suckbacks, power downs, etc., as well as a whole set of bins for more traditional sound effects, like Foley, animal sounds, transportation, punches, gunshots, and so on. Depending on your software, these bins might live within a folder in every active project. Or you might just choose to create a project specifically for sound effects, and then just open it up when you need access to your full library of sounds. Next, editors will also have a single favorites bin called Favorite Sound Effects, or something like that. In this bin, they'll have their most commonly used sound effects and pieces of sound design. They'll have their favorite 10 to 20 hits, their favorite whooshes, a number of reverses, cymbal swells, drones, whines, and so on. They'll also typically include a variety of other sound effects, depending on the type of project they typically work on. These could include screams, applause, punches, gunshots, tire skids, airplanes, nature ambience, and so on. And last, many editors will also have a project-specific bin of favorite sounds. This is a small batch that editors will typically pull from their master collection on a per-project basis. So, for example, if you were working on a trailer for, let's say, In the Heart of the Sea, you might spend a bit of time browsing through your master sound design bins and pulling out 20 to 30 interesting sounds that you think will be particularly useful for the trailer you're about to work on. Eerie underwater sound design, ocean sounds, etc. Alright, so now that we know how to organize the sounds, let's talk about how to use them. A whoosh plus a hit is a great way to accent a graphic. An attack, or any other accent or moment of impact. Rises of all types are typically used to gradually increase the intensity of a piece into a climax, like this. A suckback plus a power down are great for pausing the momentum in a piece, to let a shot resonate, or to allow a character to deliver an impactful line.
What are you, superheroes?
Just four brothers who hate bullies and love this city.
Hits by themselves are widely used across all genres and all types of promos. Subtle hits can be used to accent an important glance. Big hits can be used to help drive the music cue and intensify the feeling of the piece. And all manner of hits can be used in combination with other pieces of sound design to create an interesting moment in any cut. As we move through this course, pay attention to the different ways we're using sound design. It's something that takes a bit of practice, but studying how it's being used in other trailers is a great way to quickly familiarize yourself with the possibilities. Now, the last thing I want to talk about with regard to sound design is the arc that most trailer editors will follow. The beginner trailer editor will use very little sound design in their cut. Their pieces will generally feel a bit empty and bland, not very impactful or stylized. As they reach the intermediate stage and become more comfortable using sound design, they'll typically begin to realize how powerful it is and start using more of it. A lot more of it. Actually, way too much of it. Intermediate trailer editors will typically pride themselves on the complexity of their timelines and how many layers of sound they're using in the cut. This is not ideal. Then you've got the advanced trailer editors, the seasoned pros. These guys and girls have learned how to choose the right pieces of sound design to accomplish exactly what they're trying to do. As a result, their trailers feel crisp and snappy. Their timelines are cleaner and more elegant. And the licensing bill for their music and sound design is a heck of a lot cheaper, since a studio won't have to purchase 70 cues layered on top of each other at upwards of $1,000 a pop. You'll most likely follow this same arc, at least to some extent. But now that you're aware of it, hopefully you'll be able to speed up the process a bit and reach the advanced level a little bit more quickly. So, in this lesson, we talked all about sound design. We looked at the different types of sound design. We learned how to properly organize your sound design and effects in your editing project. And we also talked about how to use the different pieces of sound design in a variety of situations. Coming up, we'll be talking about the surprising workflow most trailer editors use when beginning a cut on the timeline. Alright, I'll see you in a bit. It would never occur to most traditional video editors to begin a trailer by cutting the audio first. I mean, it's called video editing for a reason, right? Well, in trailers, a couple unique factors come into play that flip the whole procedure upside down. First, you have the inherent musicality of a trailer or promo. It's rhythmic and relies heavily on the beats of your music and the small, crafted editorial moments. These are all dictated by your audio bed, which is one main reason why you should start with it. And second, is the shorter length of these pieces. In order for your character's lines to be heard, you must cut your music in a way that starts, stops, ebbs, and flows in exactly the right places. By starting with your audio, you'll have massively increased flexibility to make sure that you get this audio timing and pacing correct before you start filling in the picture, which, in most cases, is primarily there to support the audible story being told. Alright, let's walk through the steps of laying the foundation of your cut, using primarily audio and a bit of picture here and there. So, contrary to everything I just said, we'll actually start with just a tiny bit of picture by laying in studio logos, date cards, copy cards, and the main title graphics. Since these are typically must-haves, it makes sense to get them onto your timeline early to start serving as your anchor points. Now, we're going to rough in our music. Think of this like a crude underpainting on a canvas. We want to start blocking out moods of the trailer and imagining how our story might flow from one section to the next. This is where you'll want to go back to the sequences you created while picking out your favorite music cues. Find 2 to 3 cues that feel like they can open the trailer in Act 1, increase the pace a bit in Act 2, and then get really big, epic, emotional, exciting, etc. for Act 3. Sometimes you'll get lucky, and you'll be able to use a single music cue throughout a whole cut. Usually, this is only the case with shorter pieces between 1 and 2 minutes long, and with music cues that offer a longer, gradual build, starting low and escalating into something huge in the back end. Spend as much time as you need with this step. It might take you an entire day to find the right flow of music. This is crucial though, because it's going to determine how the rest of the trailer comes together. Don't settle on an arrangement until you're truly happy with what you've got. It's worth the time invested, trust me. Now, a quick reminder here. In the lesson titled Choosing Your Music, we talked about the importance of placing locators or markers on all the key musical beats of a cue. This makes it much easier to align the moments in your trailer with the various beats, and it also aids you in cutting up the different parts of the cue to recombine them in a way that fits best. Make sure you've done this for any cue that you're going to be using in your piece. Also, remember to place the markers directly on the source audio file in your editing program, not in your sequence. That way, whenever you load the music track to cut additional parts of the music into your sequence, it'll already have the markers baked onto it, and they'll get dropped into your sequence each time. Make sense? And second, make sure the music builds to the end of the piece. Be careful not to let the music in the middle get too big too fast. Otherwise, it'll have no place to go after that. Use the biggest music at the end of Act 3 so the trailer feels like it reaches its peak of energy at the very end. So, for example, if you place this part of your music cue at the end of Act 2, it's going to be hard to top that in Act 3. Now, there are some tricks for making a section of music feel bigger, like adding layers of additional hits and drums, which we talk about in the lesson titled Building Intensity with Custom Hit Grids. You can use a trick like that if the intensity of your middle cue is correct, but the back end just doesn't get big enough. I'll actually be using a little bit of that in our example here a bit later in the lesson. In general though, let the music do the work for you so that you don't have to do too much customization like that. It's just easier that way. Alright, so once you've got the music roughly cut into your timeline, we'll add in the character dialogue just as we have it laid out in our paper cut. Some of the lines you came up with may be cobbles, or combinations of multiple lines to create a new phrase. Now's the time to piece those together as well.
He is no normal man.
At this point, We don't really need to know exactly where all the dialogue lines will fall timing-wise. That will be dictated a lot by the music and the general feel of the trailer as we move farther along. For now, just do your best to pace out the lines in a natural way, keeping in mind your 3-act structure. Try to imagine sounds and accents occurring in between the various lines, and create natural pauses in between groups of phrases. Like this line-accent-line combo.
He's Tarzan. You're Jane. He's Tarzan. You're Jane. He'll come for you.
Don't stress too much, we'll be adjusting this all later. Okay, so once you've cut in your dialogue, do a quick levels adjustment across all your lines to get them all peaking at around -8 dB. You want to make sure that they're loud enough to hear over the music. But of course, we'll be doing a much more careful audio mix later in the process. Alright, so let's take a quick look at what we've got so far.
The jungle consumes everything. It preys on the old, the sick, the wounded. It preys on the weak, but never the strong.
He is no normal man. He was thought to be an evil spirit, a ghost in the trees. No man ever started with less.
He's Tarzan. You're Jane. He'll come for you.
You are Lord of the Apes, King of the Jungle, Tarzan. Tarzan.
Alright, at this point, our trailer is really starting to take shape. Now is a good time to add in some placeholders for key moments in our film that might work well. Any scares, explosions, or other important accents you might have thought about using when making your paper cut can be slugged into wherever feels the most appropriate. So, if you know you want to end the trailer with a car launching off the edge of a cliff, drop in a couple seconds of that footage at the end of the piece. If you know that you want to open your trailer on a wide shot of a city, go ahead and cut that in. So now that we've got some graphics, our music, our lines, and a handful of moments and shots, it's time to fine-tune everything a bit. This is going to be a bit of a back and forth process. First, go through the cut and adjust the spacing of your lines in a way that feels good with your music. We've already done this a bit earlier, but this second round is going to get us a little closer to the final pacing, since now we've got more of the shots and moments filled in to work around. I'm going to let you watch me work on the beginning section of this trailer for about 2 minutes to show you the types of adjustments that I'm making. This is a very intuitive process, so there's no hard and fast rules here. Just try to listen to the rhythm a bit, and shift around your lines to land in a way that best synergizes with the music cue. Have a look.
The jungle consumes everything. It preys on the old, the sick, the wounded. It preys on the weak, the sick, the wounded. It preys on the weak, but never the strong. It preys on the weak, but never the strong. Wounded. It preys on the weak, but never the strong. But never the strong.
He is no normal man. If he was thought to be an evil spirit, a ghost in the trees, if he was thought to be an evil spirit, a ghost in the trees. No man ever started with less.
He's Tarzan. You're Jane. He'll come for you.
Remember, you'll want to spend a bit of time cutting your music in the way that works best for each section of your piece. Like we mentioned in the Choosing the Music lesson, be sure to explore the cue, and don't be afraid to combine different parts together that work well. Look at this hypothetical example. Let's say I have a music cue that's a couple minutes long, definitely long enough to cover any single act of my trailer. And let's say I need it to start, play a little bit, and then stop during only a 15-second time frame. Very compressed. When I roughed in the cue, I probably just threw down a whole chunk that seemed to be the right mood, but it isn't really customized to the time frame it has to play out in. It just kind of starts and then it kind of stops. Not very polished. Now, you can see just by looking at the waveform that the full cue has a bit of variety to it, with fuller sections, quieter sections, and a couple starts and stops. To cut the music to fit a particular section of the cue, I'd find a couple lead-up beats, or another way to organically kick off the cue. Then, I'd upcut the music a bit to get to a bigger section. Then, I'll find a resolving note or series of notes to splice onto the end. And there we have it. Now, take a listen to the whole composition as we've cut it together. Notice how all the edits were made on the beats, with the visual assistance of the markers. That helps the editing to feel pretty seamless. It's a far more precise and deliberate way to manipulate your music than just putting large cross dissolves in between sections. That's an amateur move. So go ahead and customize your music to fit well within the sections you've cut it into. Music follows the same general rule as everything else in the trailer world. Make it do what you need it to. Manipulate and modify it as needed to make it work for your cut. Any experienced trailer editor will tell you, either the music will control you or you will control it. I suggest the latter. Also, feel free to use sound design to help with the pacing of your cut and the rhythm of the music cue. Add the occasional hit or sound effect where you need it to get the feeling right. Place a drone or sustain or rumble in locations where you want the cue to pause for a second or two and let the moment play out without feeling completely silent. Basically, use all the audio tools at your disposal to control the story, the mood, and the timing of the cut. Again, this is a very important foundational step, so spend some time getting it right. If it feels off, it probably is. Keep tinkering with it until it works. So here's what this trailer might look like at the end of this foundational stage. This is after tweaking and fine-tuning the music, the pacing of the lines, and adding a bit of sound design to really play up and accent the rhythm of the music and the various key moments that we've already cut in. Have a look.
The jungle consumes everything. It preys on the old, the sick, the wounded. It preys on the weak, but never the strong.
He is no normal man. If he was thought to be an evil spirit, a ghost in the trees, no man ever started with less.
He's Tarzan. You're Jane. He'll come for you.
You are Lord of the Apes, King of the Jungle. Tarzan. Tarzan.
Alright, so that's about it. You've got your entire piece structured out by basically only cutting in the audio. If someone closed their eyes and listened to the trailer at this point, it should sound like it could possibly be a complete trailer, minus the additional layers of sound design and various effects. So, in this lesson, we talked all about laying the foundation of your trailer with audio. We looked at how to rough in your music, lay in your dialogue lines, insert key moments and shots, and then fine-tune everything to work well together. Coming up in the next lesson, we'll be discussing how to build up to the big moments of the trailer. Alright, I'll see you in a bit. Throughout a trailer, there will be a handful of moments that are bigger and more important than the surrounding content. I'm talking about key dialogue bites.
No human could do what this thing is capable of.
Epic action moments.
The red capes are coming. The red capes are coming.
And funny punchlines.
Time to get angry. Fire!
That guy again.
Well, how about that? She can shoot fireballs out of her butt.
So, how do we draw attention to these moments and build up to them in a trailer? There are two primary ways. The first is to gradually increase the intensity of the piece leading into the moment. And the second is to subsequently play the moment in the clear. That is, quickly stop the music right before the moment to draw attention to it and let it play out. Let's start by talking about how to increase the intensity of the piece into our big moment. There are three common ways to increase the intensity in a section of a trailer. The first is with music. Cut your music in a way that increases the pace or builds up to a bigger part of the cue. Say we wanted to build up the intensity in a section of our piece that currently had the music cut like this. All we'd have to do is go into the music cue, find a part of the cue that grows big, and then cut it into our existing music. Now, this section of our piece sounds like this. Well, it's not quite there yet, but the beats are lined up. This is actually one place where a long cross dissolve might be the way to go, because it'll help smooth out the dramatic differences in intensity between these two sections of the cue. Check it out now. Nice, that sounds pretty seamless. The second way to increase intensity into a moment is with sound design. Rises are great for this. As are suckbacks and reverses. Here's a cool trick you can use with your rises to make them really spike into the climax. Add a couple keyframes to the end of the rise to quickly increase the audio levels over the last 5 or 6 frames. The sharp and sudden increase in intensity will make it feel that much more stylized and dramatic. And the third way to increase the intensity into a moment is with emotionally delivered lines, specifically yelling. Placing emotional dialogue before the big moment will heighten the energy and help draw attention to what the viewer is about to see or hear.
He's right behind us. Move, move, move!
Okay, so those were 3 ways to increase the intensity of a trailer section leading into an important moment. Now, let's talk about how to cut the moment itself. Anytime you stop the music in a trailer and play the moment in the clear, the viewer can't help but be drawn to that moment.
God.
Didn't you ever love anything that much?
Yes.
It's like saying, hey, pay attention, something important's about to happen. The term for stopping the music suddenly like this is called, get ready, a music stop. Music stops are used in all genres of editing, and we'll actually be dedicating an entire lesson to the comedy music stop a bit later in the course. Alright, so looking back at the example from before, we've got the intensity building nicely. Now let's properly stop the music for a moment to play in the clear. The easiest way to do this is to find a major downbeat in the music and cut right after it. Use sound design to add a whoosh, and a hit, to create a sense of finality. Alternatively, or even in combination, you can look in the music cue itself and find a nice place where the cue stops or pauses for a bit, perhaps with a nice ring out, drone, or sustain attached, and then you can use that as part of your stop, like this. Alright, so now we've learned how to craft a really nice intensity build, as well as a contrasting music stop. These are the ingredients needed to carve out a moment in the trailer where we can play out a key line, a joke, or even a big visual moment, like the one we looked at earlier from the Batman vs. Superman trailer. Let's take a closer look at exactly how to go about cutting a big visual moment like this. Unlike every other section of the trailer, you do not cut the audio first during a visual moment in a music stop. This is one time that picture guides the audio, not the other way around, so you'll want to get your picture working first. So the picture cutting here is pretty simple. It's really only 3 shots. Superman approaching the Batmobile, then ripping the doors off, then a 2-shot of Superman and Batman facing each other. Once you've got the visuals telling the story you're after in a moment like this, then go back with audio and enhance the moment as you see fit. In this case, we'll need a rise, sound effects of the doors being ripped off, with a couple extra whooshes and sound design to accent it. And then last, a few hits, spaced apart and leading into the next section of the trailer, which in this case happens to be the main title. Nice, that works well. So in this lesson, we talked about building into and playing out big pivotal moments in a trailer. We looked at how to use music editing, sound design, and character dialogue to gradually increase the intensity in a trailer as we build up to a big, funny, or important moment. Then, we talked about how to properly stop your music and craft a moment in the clear. Coming up in the next lesson, we're going to look at storytelling with style, or how to keep your trailer interesting as you tell your audience what the movie is all about. Alright, I'll see you in a bit. As we mentioned earlier in the course, one of the keys to cutting great trailers is telling a story with style. Style, in fact, is arguably even more important than the story itself. If you show someone a trailer that has great editorial style, but a cliché or weak story, they'll still probably think the movie looks pretty good. A constant, uninterrupted stream of story information will feel monotonous, boring, and quite frankly, it'll feel like work for the viewer trying to pay attention to it. You need to pace out the story beats, and add some accents and short style moments in between. During story-heavy sections of a trailer, particularly the first and second acts, the general pattern you'll want to follow looks a bit like this. Dialogue line, moment, line, moment, and so on. Let's take a quick look at a great example of this during the first 37 seconds of the Warcraft trailer. I'll play it once, and then we'll go back and we'll analyze how the moments are paced.
For years, our world has been at peace. But something is coming. I can feel it. Dark forces are upon us.
Okay, so that's a cool attention-grabbing open that simultaneously does a good job setting up the story of the film. Let's take a closer look at the pacing. So here we've got a section of the trailer on our timeline. We've got our picture here, our dialogue here, our music here, which has the main beats marked, and then our sound effects and our sound design here. You can see that the dialogue is cut within the beats of the music as much as possible. Have a look at the cut with just the dialogue and the music. Now, the yellow sections are the accent moments. They exist in between the dialogue lines and fall nicely on one or more main beats of the music cue. Some of the style moments are very simple, like here.
For years, our world has been at peace.
Where a line is delivered and then a whoosh and a hit are used during a dip to black to fade up on a new shot.
For years, our world has been at peace.
In this case, the sound design does most of the work creating the accent in the style moment. Other accents are a bit more visually engaging, like this 2-beat accent.
I can feel it. Dark forces are upon us.
Where on the first beat, we fade up on a wide shot of a burning village, accented by a whoosh, a ping, and a sound effect of a scream. Then on the second beat, we see our hero's knee come down on a skull. with another ping sound and a slight bone crunch.
Dark forces are... I can feel it. Dark forces are upon us.
Then another dialogue line follows.
Dark forces are upon us.
And of course, other accents are even more involved, like the climax of this particular section of the trailer.
Are upon us.
Where we've got an orc attack timed to the beats of the music and accented with big whooshes, hits, and roars, and so on.
Are upon us.
The purpose of style moments intercut with your story is twofold. First, they keep the viewer engaged and they break up the monotony of the exposition with interesting shots and sounds. And second, they give the viewer time to comfortably process the story information and understand what's going on. Remember, even in a trailer with a well-simplified story, it's still throwing a lot of information at a viewer over the course of 2.5 minutes. As with many aspects of trailer editing, use your music rhythm as a guide for exactly how to pace these lines and moments. So in this lesson, we talked a bit about storytelling with style. We looked at how to pace the dialogue lines in a cut and create accent moments of visual and auditory interest between them, using engaging shots and various sound design elements. Coming up in the next lesson, we'll be taking a look at proper ways to create effective and professional-looking montages and shot sequences. Alright, I'll see you in a bit. In this lesson, we're going to take an in-depth look at how to cut professional trailer montages. Now, trailer montages are a whole different animal from feature montages and require quite a bit more finesse to pull off successfully. Let's start by reviewing the two main purposes of trailer montages. First, a montage is meant to stir up emotions in a viewer. You're trying to use big music and get the best visuals to really captivate your viewer and get them excited about the journey being promised by the full movie. And second, a montage gives you the freedom to jump around the different parts of the film. That is, you create a section of the trailer primarily by going to a big part of the music cue, where it feels natural and acceptable to combine disconnected moments and shots from the best scenes of the film. It's in these montages that you can really make sure people have a chance to see all the most epic, beautiful, emotional, funny, scary, and interesting shots in case you weren't already able to find a good home for them someplace else in the trailer. So before beginning to create a montage or a shot sequence, there's a handful of required items. You'll definitely need your visual breakdown ready to go. You'll be using this to hone in on the best shots and to create new and interesting combinations of seemingly unrelated visuals. And you'll also need to have your music properly marked, with all the important beats visually obvious. Alright, so let's say you've got a section of your piece where you want to crank the music and montage a bit, like in the final act of the Exodus Gods and Kings trailer. Go through your visual breakdown and cut the very best shots into the end of your sequence. Think of this as your super selects, or your favorite shots. Obviously, you'll want to be careful not to use shots that you've already placed earlier in the trailer. Though, if a shot works better in the montage than it does earlier in the piece, maybe you'll want to switch things up a bit to accommodate. Alright, so what type of shots should you be looking for? Well, that depends a bit on the movie itself and the genre, but there are some general guidelines to follow. Look for impact moments that can land on beats or be accented by sound. Here are some of the impact moments that we can pull from our visual breakdown of Exodus, Gods and Kings. Next, look for shots with motion, I'm talking about both motion within the frame and also the general movement of the camera itself. Here are some good shots with motion from the feature. Motion within montage shots makes it much easier to smoothly cut from one shot to the next. On a more symbolic level, it helps if everything is in motion during a montage. So aside from the camera movement or the action within the frame, the state of being of the characters should be in motion too. Which brings us to the next point. Look for emotional accent shots. Screams, embraces, kisses, laughter, dramatic looks, and crying are all great. Playing emotion against action and movement helps to create a very satisfying and well-rounded montage. Here are some great emotional accents from Exodus that we could drop into the end of our sequence. Next, look to vary your camera distance in montage shots. It's easy to get caught up with energetic close-ups and mediums, but you'll need a bit of variety. Add some wide shots to make the movie world feel big and break up visual monotony. Now, obviously, the wave shot is one of the biggest, most epic visuals in this particular movie, so it's likely that you'd earmark something like that to serve as your grand finale, way back during the paper cutting and structuring phase. Alright, that's a good batch of shots to work with here. Before we cut together our montage, here are some general editing tips to keep in mind. First, consider cause and effect. Think about how one shot might flow into another. We've all seen the classic punch or gunshot into an explosion.
The other one's a professional criminal. Escaped prison twice.
But get creative with this. A dramatic head movement from a character could appear to cause a door to slam shut, or lightning to strike in the next shot, like this example from the Exodus Gods and Kings trailer. Keep in mind that none of these shot combos were organic to these movies. Until the trailer editor placed these shots next to each other, these moments did not exist, but they sure work well in the trailer. Next, consider your focal point location in each shot. So what do I mean by this? Well, if your first shot has an object moving across the screen quickly from left to right, you'd want the action in your second shot to take place on the right side of the frame, where the action from the previous shot drew your eye to. Now, this isn't always possible to do, but it's something to keep in mind whenever it is possible. So, let's say you've got these 5 shots you'd like to cut into a montage or a shot sequence. Here's how you might cut them without taking into consideration the focal point location. Now, just by changing the order around a little bit, and then flopping a shot, we've got a shot sequence where the action flows much more smoothly from one shot to the next. By keeping the focal points in relatively similar areas of the frame, you're making sure the viewer's eye is tracking the important visual information quickly, without feeling confused or overwhelmed. It'll also appear smoother and more enjoyable to watch. Next, consider shot grouping. Most of the time, in a montage, every shot won't be from a completely different scene. You'll have 2 or 3 related shots that play from one scene, that lead into another short combo of shots from another scene. Like this example from the Jungle Book trailer. The shot groups should each tell micro stories in the montage. In the first group of 2 shots, we see a wide, and then a medium, of animals running towards Baloo and Bagheera. In group 2, we see Mowgli scaling a wall, and King Louie peering out at him. In group 3, Mowgli jumps towards a wildebeest in the first shot, and grabs onto it in the next. And finally, in group 4, we have a sequence of 7 shots from multiple scenes that all come together to tell one micro story. Shere Khan roars at Mowgli, then pounces at him as Mowgli jumps away. Bagheera reacts to this moment, though the shot is from a different scene. Mowgli's jump continues as he swings through the trees in a new scene, runs through King Louie's temple in another, and continues into the last two shots of the sequence as Mowgli jumps out through a window and barely escapes King Louie's hand. So in this fourth group alone, we have 7 shots from 3 different scenes that work together to create a micro story of adventure and danger that leads into the climax of the trailer. This is a great example of a montage that gets around the movie without feeling random or chaotic. Alright, next, consider your beat locations. Not every shot will be cut to the next on the beat. Sometimes, actions within a shot will need to fall on a musical beat, like a wink, a window shattering, or a car crashing into a wall. And last, consider style options. Don't be afraid to use dips in and out of black, cuts, and fades to help stylize your montage if that's the look that you're going for. Here's a good example of black used effectively in a montage in trailer 2 for The Huntsman, Winter's War.
I'm headed straight for the castle. They wanna make me their queen.
The dips to black add some nice style to the piece, and they work well with the rhythm of the music cue. Okay, so now we're ready to put it all together. Using our marked music as a guide, and keeping in mind the tips that we've discussed, we can play around with interesting shot combos and pretty quickly form a pleasing montage. Take a look.
I came here to tell you that something is coming that is out of my control.
Great. Good cause and effect, movement between shots, and decent consistency of focal point locations. Now, maybe we want the montage a bit more stylized. Let's play around with dips and cuts to black.
I came here to tell you that something is coming that is out of my control.
Nice, that works well too. Montages are a lot of fun to cut, and as long as you keep some of the tips and guidelines from this lesson in mind, your viewer is going to love them too. So in this lesson, we talked all about cutting professional looking montages and trailers. We looked at the 2 main purposes of montages and reviewed some required items to have before you start cutting, like your visual breakdown and a marked music cue. Then we reviewed some montage shot choice guidelines, like impact, motion, and emotion. We discussed 5 montage editing tips to keep in mind, such as cause and effect, focal point location, shot grouping, beat locations, and style options. And we put everything into practice by cutting together a new custom montage at the end of the trailer for Exodus: Gods and Kings. Coming up in the next lesson, we're going to talk about working with graphics and voiceover, and how to use them effectively and professionally within a trailer or promo. Alright, I'll see you in a bit. Graphics and voiceover can do a lot for a trailer or a promo spot. Let's look at 5 common uses for graphics and voiceover. They can quickly summarize the plot of the movie, leaving more room for jokes and fun moments, like this narration for Daddy's Home.
Brad, you're the coolest!
Brad had finally been accepted by his stepkids.
Said you won't cry, Brad.
I'm not.
Until
My ex-husband's here.
Dusty came home.
Holy.
They can talk directly to the audience and call the viewer to action, like these cards for Deadpool.
That bad guy, he's got my girl.
Don't worry, baby. I'm coming.
They can set up a joke, like this narration for Zoolander 2.
One hero
Hey, handsome!
will answer the call.
Tiny phone, that is so retro. I'm gonna take a picture with my phone.
Zoolander 2, February 12th.
They can help eventize and position the movie, like these cards for Mad Max Fury Road. And they can list cast members and pedigree, like these cards for Love the Coopers.
There's one comedy that's bringing everyone together.
I want everyone to have a perfect Christmas.
Alan Arkin, John Goodman, Ed Helms, Diane Keaton, Anthony Mackie, Amanda Seyfried, June Squibb, Marissa Tomei, and Olivia Wilde.
No matter what happens, we are family.
Here, here.
Let's look at a few best practices for working with graphics and narration. We'll start with graphics. First, you want to keep the message on each card short and sweet. Too much text will be hard to read and likely it'll be missed. On a similar note, make sure you leave the graphic up for long enough for a viewer to read it. 2 seconds is usually a good length, though you can go longer and shorter depending on the number of words on the card. Consider how your graphics come on. Will they slam down, slide in, fade up, hard cut on? All things to consider based on your genre, positioning, and chosen style. And the last rule to keep in mind for graphics is to keep the design pretty simple, or hire an artist. Unless you're talented with graphics, you probably won't end up with professional looks like these, and you'll end up creating something that looks amateur or low budget. That'll only hurt your trailer. If it's necessary to create them yourself, keep it simple. Stick to solid colored text on a solid background, maybe with a slight vignette around the edges or a bit of very subtle texture. White over black is also always a pretty safe option. Consider sticking with one of the following fonts, which are generally hard to mess up: Avenir, Avant-Garde, Bell Gothic, Futura, Garamond, Gotham, Helvetica, Memphis, Rockwell, or Trajan. Now let's look at narration. Here are a few things to keep in mind when using or thinking about narration in your trailer or spot. The biggest note here is to make sure it feels appropriate for the piece. While narration can be a great way to convey information quickly, it can also easily make a trailer or a spot feel silly or dated. Like this example from the 2004 trailer for Wimbledon.
Peter Colt was once a rising star.
Once ranked 15th in the world, are you?
11th, actually.
Who never rose to the top.
That's Peter Colt, once ranked 17th in the world.
11th!
See what I mean? Narration is more commonly used in shorter length pieces because there's less time to get the message across. You'll also have to be a bit more aggressive in grabbing the viewer's attention. In trailers, graphics are a little bit more common, and narration can have a tendency to sound a bit cheesy. Generally, narration is very effective for comedies, kids' movies, and sometimes suspense and horror. Conversely, it's generally less effective in action and drama. And the last tip for using narration would be to hire a pro with the right voice. Professional narrators can get a bit pricey, but the level of polish they bring to a piece is well worth it. Some narrators are better suited to horror, others to comedies, and so on. Make sure you have the right sounding voice for your particular cut and project. So in this lesson, we talked all about using graphics and narration in a trailer or promo spot. We looked at the different uses for graphics and voiceover, and reviewed some of the best practices about when and how to use each. Coming up in the next lesson, we're going to look at the important concept of unresolution and how it applies to an entire trailer as well as individual moments throughout a cut. Alright, I'll see you in a bit. Trailers are all about unresolved moments, or unresolution. In this short lesson, I want to explore this concept a bit. Everyone understands that a trailer is meant to tease a viewer with the promise of the full movie, which means never giving away the ending. That's unresolution at work on a macro level. However, remember to employ unresolution on the micro level as well. That means when you have a shot of your main characters driving off a cliff, cut the shot before you see what happens to them. It means when you have a character being stalked by a supernatural being, show the demon, monster, whatever, appear behind your character, and then cut away. When you're editing, keep in mind that hard cuts to black are a great way to leave your viewer in the dark. Pardon the awful pun. Remember, it's the movie's job to resolve all these moments and micro questions for the viewer, as well as the macro level question of what happens in the end. So, whenever possible throughout a trailer, never resolve anything. Leave questions unanswered, don't tie up loose ends, and keep the audience wanting more. So in this very quick lesson, we talked about the concept of unresolution. We discussed the concept on a micro level with shots and moments, and on a macro level with the overall story in the film. Coming up in the next lesson, we'll be diving into storytelling and character development, and learning some specific techniques that you can use when editing your next trailer. Alright, I'll see you in a bit.